Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Peter Sikanda. I'm a policy analyst with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this webinar on farm security. We all know that farms are more than just businesses. They are our homes, our workplaces, and the foundation of our food system. However, like any business, farms face security risks ranging from theft of equipment, fuel, and other assets to issues like trespass, biosecurity threats, and even cybercrime. The good news is there are practical, cost-effective steps we can all take to make our farms more safe and secure. We are joined today by Provincial Constable Bradley Keffer, Auto Theft Prevention Officer with the Perth County, Ontario Provincial Police. PC Keffer joined the Ontario Provincial Police in August of 2017 after completing his training at the Ontario Police College and the Ontario Provincial Police Academy. He was assigned to the area he was born and raised, Perth County West Region. PC Keffer filled the frontline law enforcement duties where he investigated the Highway Traffic Act, Provincial Offences Act, Criminal Code, and Controlled Drugs and Substances Act investigations. Additionally, he recognized the value of a frontline police officer's role in community engagement, often making time for foot patrols, school patrols, and follow-up with vulnerable community members. In May 2023, PC Keffer filled a temporary assignment with the Perth County Community Street Crime Unit, where he assisted with property crime and drug investigations. During this assignment, he wrote numerous search warrants and led Project Fracture, a drug investigation which led to the arrest of a cocaine dealer. In addition to local investigations, PC Keffer was called upon to assist with 4 organized crime enforcement bureau investigations, where he assisted with warrant executions, searches, and exhibit lodging. In February 2024, PC Keffer was assigned to the newly created Perth County Auto Theft Team, a position funded through grant money received through the local police services board. The Auto Theft Team looks to prevent auto thefts through community engagement and drive investigations through intelligence-led policing. This presentation will cover what to watch out for, overall auto theft trends nationally and within Ontario, various techniques used by criminals to steal vehicles, and prevention tips, techniques, and tools. I should also note, several years ago, OFA partnered with Farm and Food Care Ontario to develop a guide that pulls together relevant security information that applies to farmers and rural residents. This is available on our website, and I will include a link in the chat once we get going. Before we dive in, a couple of housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded, so you will be able to watch it again if you'd like, or share it with friends at a later date. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat as we go. We will also leave time at the end for question and answers, but feel free to drop your thoughts or experiences in the chat as well. We'd love to hear from you. All right, well, with that, let's get started, and I'll hand things over to PC Keffer to kick things off. Thank you very much.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to sit down with me, and we can talk about auto theft. It is in the news. We keep hearing it out of the GTA, but it affects agricultural communities definitely. And I've seen that in my job, and you likely know somebody, either yourself or through family friends, that have been victims of auto theft themselves. So I have a presentation today. If you, like they said, if you have questions, please type them in the chat and we'll get to them. Often when I do this, I do get questions that are later answered in later slides. So we'll go from there. I'm gonna start sharing my screen here. Okay. Can everybody see that? Okay.
Looks good.
Just gonna move my, there we go. So in Perth County, we were very fortunate that we had some grant money granted to us through the Perth County Police Services Board. And we have funding now to create a specific auto theft unit. So there's myself and my analyst, Larry. who are in the unit, and we have Sergeant Scott Lobb as our supervisor. We go about preventing auto thefts in a couple different ways and investigating. So the first half is us doing prevention work, and that looks like things like this, like a webinar with a specific group, just educating them and letting people know how they can protect their assets. And then the other part is investigations and having that a bit more expertise and time to dive into the complex type of auto theft investigations.
I don't hear anything, Brad.
You're not hearing anything?
No.
Hmm.
No, not here either.
When you shared your presentation, did you share also audio and things like that? Was that
Excellent
kept?
question. Let me. Screen 2. Oh, let's try this. Okay, let's try this again.
Almost 10,000 vehicles have been reported stolen off Toronto's streets so far this year, and many are ending up in other countries and continents.
CTV's John Woodward has been tracking Canadian cars across the globe where some say there are unnecessary barriers to bringing them home.
Trucks lined up outside a port in Dubai. Video and pictures obtained by CTV News show vehicles seized in the Middle Eastern city, but authorities believed they were stolen from Canada. Same with these vehicles seized in Belgium and Europe, and these vehicles recovered in Morocco make it very obvious with Ontario plates and other markings, including on this red Ram truck. A truck Mark Renault hasn't seen since January when it was stolen from him in Windsor, Ontario.
I was shocked for a week. Why that place, you know, like nothing against Africa, but it was, I'm still shocked.
Police in Ontario confirmed to Renault the truck had been found more than 6,000 kilometers away.
It was the first time in my life I've ever had a vehicle stolen, and I was very upset to lose a truck that I worked so hard to have.
His truck is still stuck abroad among so many others that have been seized that storing them all is a big challenge.
Low recovery rate, especially in Ontario and Quebec. When you couple that with the number of vehicles that are being identified by our international partners that are Canadian vehicles, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vehicles that have made it their way to other countries successfully, and then now trying to repatriate those vehicles back to Canada is a longer process.
It's a mess. It has been crazy this last year.
One company, Global Trends, which tracks stolen cars, says the paperwork is a problem.
We don't have the same database. So it takes time to get in touch with Equité or to get in touch with Interpol Ottawa, and then it takes really a bunch of days. And meanwhile, these cars and these containers are blocking in these ports because they have taken so many space.
Authorities are making progress. Dozens of cars were returned from the Mediterranean port of Malta to York Regional Police earlier this year, and 24 cars worth some $2.6 million were returned to Halton Police last month. Car thefts continue to surge to about 9,500 so far this year in Toronto, for example, up 45% since last year, but seizures at Canadian borders are plateauing, seizing 1,310 in 2022, about the same as the year before. Sources tell CTV News staffing could be one issue, with so few border guards tasked to checking outgoing containers that something as simple as a vacation can create a gap in enforcement.
The answer to this is really collaboration, working together, and a focus on a priority to make it harder for these vehicles to leave the country.
Authorities trying to seize more cars like this one en route to Canadian ports, a better option because once it leaves Canada, it's very hard to get it back. John Woodward, CTV News.
Okay, so probably not new news to you that auto thefts in Canada have been on the rise. And you can see some stats on our screen here. In 2022, more than 105,000 vehicles were stolen across the country. Targeted vehicles tend to be those newer body styles, those newer models, 2 or 3 years old, is kind of that hot vehicle that is being targeted. Auto theft losses tripled from 2018 to 2022 nationally, with a total value being estimated at $1.2 billion. And the majority of Canadians feel that the rise in auto theft contributes to them feeling less safe in their communities. So here's the national data, top 10 most stolen vehicles for 2023. We're still waiting on the 24 data. It should be out by the end of this month. And then we'll update this, but here's the 23 data anyway. And I'm going to talk you through this data set. So our number one vehicle, we have the Toyota Highlander, is the top make and model that is stolen nationally. The most often stolen year is that 2021 model year. The next column, we have number of insured vehicles. So that's how we're measuring how many are on the road in Canada. Across Canada for that 2021 Toyota Highlander model, we have 123,532 on Canadian roads. Our next column is the total number of thefts of that make model year. So for that 21 Toyota Highlander, we have 3,414 thefts. And then the next is a theft frequency rate. And here we can see 2.76% of the Toyota Highlanders, of the 123,000 that are on the roads, 2.76% have been stolen. So that's going to kind of, as far as what's a hot vehicle, what vehicles are they targeting, you're going to want to look at that theft frequency rate, and that's going to indicate to us. If we go down to the number 5, the Toyota, let's go down to number 6, the Honda Civic. The 2019 Honda Civic is still high up on this list at number 6 in Canada. If we go across those columns, we can see there's nearly 700,000 2019 Honda Civics on Canadian roads. And then there was 1,654 thefts of those vehicles. But when you look at the theft frequency rate, we're not quite 0.25%, which is basically telling us the Honda Civic is high on this list because just the sheer volume of Honda Civics that exist out there naturally is going to be more thefts of those vehicles that occur. But if we compare it to the number 8, the Land Rover Range Rover for the 2020 model year, there's only 34,000 and change vehicles insured across the country. And if we carry on, almost 4.5% of the 2020 Land Rover Range Rovers have been stolen, which is a much higher rate. And that tells us that is a targeted vehicle by organized crime. So if you start seeing that frequency rate approach 1%, we're starting to get that's a targeted vehicle. And certainly you're going to see when we get to the Ontario data that the targeted vehicles are well over that 1% theft rate. So here's the national breakdown by province and region. Nationally, this is the average from 2021 to 2023. So averaging 70,000, just north of 70,000 a year. Ontario's making about a third of that, with Quebec behind at 15,000. The Western Canada which is everything west of Ontario, including the territories, is at just over 23,000. And then Atlantic Canada is just over 2,000. So that's everything east of Quebec. Now, I'll say since this data set came out, we've been working with Equite, who's the Insurance Bureau of Canada, to continue tracking trends. And since Ontario's been focused on auto theft, Atlantic Canada's seen a drastic increase in their thefts. Quebec used to be very high on the list for auto thefts, and that's because traditionally Montreal was a hub for organized crime, and organized crime activity is part of how they make money is stealing vehicles, and then they got the Port of Montreal right there. Quebec started a auto theft grant program to assist law enforcement combat auto theft about 10 years ago. So they're about 10 years ahead of where we are. And that's why their numbers are down. And that's why our numbers have climbed since 2018 because they went to the next juicy target, which was Ontario. So in Ontario in 2022 was the spike, the peak of the increase. Again, Quebec had made themselves a harder target. It was harder to steal a vehicle in Quebec, so then they turned to Ontario because there's a lot of valuable vehicles here. We got a population of just over 14 million now, so there's a lot of cars available, and we weren't protecting ourselves as well as the Quebecois. Again, let's look at the data set from 2018 to 2023 in Ontario. The auto theft claim costs increased over 500% in that 5-year window, which is crazy. And that's why we're all paying more in insurance costs now. So here's our Ontario data set, our top 10 in Ontario. And again, I'm going to point you to that theft frequency rate. So our number one in Ontario is the Lexus RX series, which is a beautiful SUV, but we're getting close to 5% of the 2022 Lexus RX series on Ontario roads. Nearly 5% of them have been stolen. Toyota Highlanders, again, up on that list. That Ram 1500, just under 1%, so it's not as bad. And there's a lot of them on the road, but that's getting to be a targeted vehicle, right? Because those are beautiful vehicles as well. The Honda CR-V, again, the sheer volume of them just on Ontario roads, the 2020 Honda CR-V, we're getting close to 250,000 for that one model year on Ontario roads. So the theft frequency rate, it's a high on that list, but again, it's not indicating that it's a targeted vehicle. It's just because the sheer volume of them, they're naturally going to have more thefts of those. Let's get down to number 5. The Land Rover Range Rover series for the 2020 model year is 6.84%. Now we've got a lot of farmers in the chat, so let's put this into perspective. If your farm, say your livestock you have on your farm, if you had a 6.84% genetic defect rate in your livestock, that would be catastrophic to your business. If you were growing crops and your crop yield failed nearly 7%, that's going to hurt your bottom line, and that's a big impact on your business and your reputation. Land Rover is very concerned about their number, and their reputation has been hurt from this. And in my engagement with community members, they've indicated, well, the car manufacturers don't care because they get to sell me another vehicle if it gets stolen anyway. And I'll tell you, I've spoke with Range Rover and Jaguar representatives in the UK, and they are very concerned about what's been done to their reputation. They're very concerned that their customers feel unsafe and the vehicle brand has taken a hit, and they're pouring millions of pounds into redeveloping that vehicle and reorganizing how can we build this vehicle so that it's harder to steal. We'll get into the techniques that they're using later, the thieves are. But Range Rover is spending some money on trying to figure that problem out. Hey, narrowing it down further, again, I work in Perth County, so I got Perth County data um, to use. Most of our thefts in Perth County in 2022 and 2023 were still deemed preventable. You can see 41% were deemed preventable. It's actually the 5-year average prior to our grant starting. 2/3 of our stolen vehicles were unlocked with the key left inside the ignition. And I'm talking to a bunch of farmers, and I get it. I grew up in rural Perth County on a couple of acres. Both my grandparents were beef farmers. My parents were both raised on farms. I worked on farms myself. And when I was a teenager, my parents would leave the keys in the ignition of the vehicle and it would be out in the yard. And then if one of us had to move something around, we could do it easy because we knew where the keys were. The problem is in the early 2000s, crystal meth became a thing. And now we've got a lot of drug addicts running around, and they tend to feed their habit by stealing vehicles, stealing batteries and power tools from businesses, stealing items from farms, and then selling those to feed their habit. So that has completely changed the game. I keep telling people the world I grew up in does not exist anymore. So we need to adapt and we need to start locking our vehicles and taking our keys inside. Back to Perth County. So our surrounding counties, Norfolk County down by Hamilton, Haldimand County, again down by Hamilton, Waterloo Region, Dufferin County, which is up by Orangeville, they all started to see an increase in organized crime style thefts that were targeting newer vehicles. Meanwhile, Perth was the unlocked farmer's pickup truck used by your local criminal to conduct local crime. In early 2024, we started to notice, we're getting some incidents where organized crime out of Toronto is coming out and targeting specific vehicles. And an example is up in Listowel, there was a 36-hour window where we had 3 F-150 Tremors, all very new, beautiful trucks. 3 of them were stolen in a day and a half, which tells me that there was a crew that had come out and was targeting that make, model, trim level of the F-150. Here's my analyst just broke down by vehicle family, or brand rather. So Chevy, Dodge, Chrysler, Ram, Ford, and GM are the most common, and that makes sense given the area that I work in. It's a lot of again, agricultural area, a lot of domestic dealerships. We don't have the Subarus and we don't have the Mazda dealers in Listowel and Mitchell. It's a lot more domestic dealers. So naturally, we're going to see our data reflect that. Here he's broken it down by model, and he's kind of clustered them as to vehicle family type. So we can see the Ram and the F-150 are pretty high up there. But when you consider that General Motors has the 2 brands, GMC and Chevrolet, the Sierra and the Silverado are essentially the same pickup truck with a different badge on the front. If you stack them on top of each other, they would be higher than the Ram. So again, I'll get GMC drivers say, well, the Sierra is not as bad as the Ram. Well, it's kind of the same truck as the Silverado, and if you consider that, it is a targeted vehicle, right? Okay, hotspots and timing. Here's a heat map of Perth County. Again, Stratford's data set is going to be separate from ours because Stratford has its own police service. So they have Stratford, Perth South, and St. Mary's. So you're not going to see that heat map reflect in those parts, but you can see Listowel in the north, Mitchell in the west, and Milverton in the northeast are hot spots. And that makes sense because there's just a higher population density in those quote unquote urban areas. So naturally, there's going to be more vehicles stolen there. However, you'll also notice in the rural parts of our county, there's a whole lot of dots scattered throughout. And those are typically farmers leaving their unlocked keys in an unlocked truck. And I'm not trying to pick on farmers or accuse farmers of anything. It's just those behaviors from 15, 20, 25 years ago, where you're leaving your keys in the unlocked vehicle, those are hard to break, but it's hurting those owners of those vehicles. And farmers will, they take the truck out to the field, they leave it parked in the field while they tow a grain wagon with the tractor back to the farm. And now that truck is sitting there vulnerable. So that's a lot. That's why you see so many dots throughout our county in those rural areas. One more quick point with this. Our hot times of the year are the spring planting and the fall harvest, because that's when those vehicles are being left unattended in the field while the farmer's running around getting 2 hours of sleep at night. But they're towing stuff with their tractor and the truck's left unattended. So how are the thieves targeting vehicles and how are they getting into them? Again, this is back to the organized crime side of the house with the pros coming out of the city. Here's our most common methods of auto theft. So a relay attack, that's where people are hanging their key fobs on a key hook near the front door, and somebody's coming with an antenna and relaying that back to another person who's at the vehicle and getting into it using your own key signal to get into the car and start it without actually holding the key. And you'll see an example of that coming up. Another is breaking and entering. I can kick your window out of your car and I can replace that for $300 or $400. But if I'm stealing an $80,000 pickup truck, I'm willing to eat that cost because I can sell the truck for $80,000 and it costs me $400 to replace that window. The OBD2 attack. An OBD2 is a plug-in under your dash, and that's where your mechanic plugs in to diagnose the vehicle, what's going on, or is there an error code to figure out how to fix your vehicle. The OBD2 is also a port where you can plug in and start to control the vehicle. And criminals have figured this out, so they are plugging in and they're able to do some things. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute. And then this is again more of a GTA problem, but tow truck theft in the big city, you have tow trucks that'll just pull up and hook up to a vehicle and drive off with it. You have tow truck companies that are run by organized crime and they're shooting each other over who gets to steal a vehicle. I'll say we're very fortunate in Perth County where we have a tow truck association and they've been vetted by police. One, to make sure that they're not criminals, and two, to ensure that the tow rates are kept to a reasonable level. And if you're dealing with police, it will be a tow association vehicle that's called to service. So we're lucky we kind of have a grip on this in Perth County, but once you get onto that 401 corridor and into Toronto, they don't have the same association that we do. And so the tow truck theft is an issue. So here's an example of the relay attack. You're going to see somebody come up to a door and pull open what looks like a lasso, and that's going to be an antenna. And in the backpack, there's going to be an amplifier to relay the signal back to another person who's at the vehicle. And you'll see he's wearing his mask because he's very concerned about COVID. And we've got our Lexus RX series vehicle in the driveway there. And this was out of the GTA. and the vehicle's gone. And that took less than a minute. So that was the relay attack. Next, I hadn't talked about this previously. It's not a big issue in Ontario, but we have seen it in, like, there was a crew that was up around Sudbury doing this. This has been a big issue in the UK. So this is actually going to be what's called a CAN bus attack. The CAN bus is, think of it as the nervous system in your car, and it's connected to the brain, or the computer inside that controls everything. Well, modern CAN bus systems were designed so that you could access any one component and kind of see what's going on with all of them. Again, criminals, being smart, have figured out that they can tap into the CAN bus system, and then they can start talking to the onboard computer and start doing things. So in this example, we're going to see somebody pry open a quarter panel of the vehicle, access a CAN bus wire, tap into it. They're able to unlock the vehicle and start it, and then they're going to drive off. So this one took a little longer than the relay attack, but it still only took a couple of minutes. It doesn't take long, and so this is why we have to take steps to protect our assets. Okay, I talked about the OBD2 attack. So here's an example. Earlier this week, I went on Amazon and I just searched OBD2 tablet. And here's a tablet I found that anyone can buy on Amazon for less than $700. And that's going to allow me to plug into an OBD2 port. And what these criminals are doing is they'll kick a window out, because again, they can replace it for $300 or $400. They'll climb into the vehicle with this tablet. They'll plug into the OBD2 port, and they'll have blank keys. If they're stealing a BMW, they'll have blank BMW keys. If they're stealing a Ram 1500, they'll have blank Ram keys. And with the tablet, they can actually program those blank keys to be the legitimate key now. And now they can start the car and they're off to the races. Again, they can do this, and the good ones can do it in less than 2 minutes. So let's talk about prevention tips and how are we going to stop this from happening to us. Relay attacks, you can buy a Faraday bag or a Faraday box. That's a signal blocking bag or box. The boxes look like jewelry boxes that you can just keep by the front door. When you come home, toss your keys in the box or in the bag, close the lid, and that's going to block the signal so that they can't capture the signal and relay it back. Breaking and entering, use your vehicle alarms and immobilizers. You can get aftermarket ones installed if you're not satisfied with the manufacturer ones, although most of the manufacturer ones on the new stuff is pretty good. I'll take this a step further with the break and enter. Most people have a garage. A lot of people have a garage, but they don't use it to park their cars. They use it to store stuff. Now, my lovely wife likes to remind me that we need more storage. And I like to remind her, no, we need less stuff. So if we used our garages to park the car in the garage rather than storing stuff, the criminal's not even going to be able to see the car, and it's going to be that much harder to break into it. The OBD2 attacks, we can actually buy OBD2 locks. You can buy them on Amazon. I think Canadian Tire sells some. And basically, it's a lock that goes over the OBD2 port, and we can lock it with a key. And now I can't just plug in an OBD2 plug into it. I need a key to get through that lock. And then tow truck theft, parking in well-lit, visible areas is going to be a huge benefit. I like to, like when I park somewhere, I typically park further back in the parking lot to allow the elderly or pregnant ladies or whatever the best access to the store, to the hotel, or whatever I'm going to. But that's actually a terrible idea because I should be parking under a street light in view of wherever I'm going to be so that I can see something that's happening. So when we started our program, one of the things I did was I started put out some paid duties. And we had officers go to the local Tim Hortons, and all they would do is stand there and just people watch for a little bit. And people would park their cars, leave the car running with the keys in it, and I'm just going to jump into Tim Hortons and get my coffee quick. Well, it's never as quick as you think. You might bump into a neighbor and start chit-chatting, or you might have to use the bathroom when you're in there, or the lineup's longer than you think. And 2 seconds turns into 2 or 3 minutes, sometimes 7 or 8 minutes. So our officers would observe this, and then when the people came back out with their coffee, they'd just make a comment to them and say, hey, you're at risk here. Your vehicle's left running without you in it for 4 minutes. And if I was a car thief, it would be very easy for me to steal. And the overwhelming response we got back was, you can basically see on the screen, I don't care if my vehicle gets stolen because my insurance company will just buy me a new one anyway. And the point I'm going to make in the next few slides is this is just about you and your stolen vehicle. So there's a handsome fella in the top right corner there. That is Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was a serial killer who used stolen vehicles across state lines to kidnap women and murder them. The vehicle on the left, that's a bit of a wreck there. That is from a terrorist attack in New York City in 1993 with a car bomb that was placed in it, and it was a stolen vehicle that was used. You may recall this. This was Briar Schmeglinski and Cam McLeod, 2 young men from Vancouver, BC, who started a killing spree. I think they started with a young Australian couple that was in BC working for the summer. They stole a vehicle, and then they went to northern BC, and then they killed another gentleman, and then they stole his vehicle, and then they killed another couple in Alberta. And basically, they kept murdering people, and they kept stealing vehicles every 36 hours or so that police would have to restart the search. So we don't know what vehicle we're searching for. We have to basically restart part of the investigation so we know who and what we're looking for. They ended up making it all the way to Manitoba. They decided to take care of themselves, I guess, but it certainly lengthened the investigation because of the stolen vehicle aspect. And then locally, these aren't all professionals stealing the cars for export. A lot of them are local criminals who are using it to conduct local crimes on our local businesses and farms in our neighborhood. They'll use a stolen vehicle to steal ATVs, to steal power tools, to steal generators and air compressors. And again, a lot of them are drug addicts who are on drugs, driving impaired, and they don't stop for police. They'll drive 120 or 140 kilometers an hour through your downtown small town where people are trying to go about their daily business. You're trying to pull your car out from the parking on the side of the street. And if this vehicle's going 140 kilometers an hour through the downtown, that's now a 2,000-pound bullet that's not going to stop. There's also further impacts regarding auto theft. There's the financial cost. So you might think, well, my insurance company will just buy me a new one. Yeah, they might, or they probably will, but there's going to be a cost. You're certainly going to be out your deductible. Your interest rate may not be as good to finance a vehicle as it was. You're probably not going to get the full value of the vehicle that was stolen. So you're not going to come out, certainly not any financially better off. There is a emotional and psychological impact to it. When I was in university, my vehicle got broken into. It wasn't stolen, but they rummaged around and stole some CDs and some loose change. And even that had a psychological impact on me, and it certainly didn't feel very good. And I can only imagine if the vehicle was taken and all my personal items were in there. Who knows if I left a bank statement in the back or something. Certainly not a good feeling anyway. And then there's that broader societal impact where these vehicles are being used for local crime a lot of the time, and they don't care for the general rules or safety for the rest of the public. So most likely, if it's stolen by a pro, here's your 3 most likely scenarios that's going to happen to that vehicle. One is it's going to be shipped overseas, and we saw that in the video at the start of this presentation where vehicles were being shipped to Dubai and West Africa. I think some have been shipped to Russia with all the Ukraine war sanctions. They can't get their luxury European vehicles there, so they're buying them through the black market. The next is fraudulently revind, where I'm stealing a vehicle and I'll either create a fake VIN or I'll take a copy of a United States vehicle, same make, same model, same trim. I'll take that VIN and I'll put it on this one, and that becomes what's called a clone because the US and Canada systems don't talk as well to each other. And so it's hard to track. And now if I've owned that vehicle, I can trade that into a local dealership who may have a hard time picking up that it's a stolen car. And now it's being sold to somebody else. And just talking with intelligence organizations and the Insurance Bureau of Canada, the revins are going to be the future of auto theft in Canada. And that's what we're going to start to see more and more of. And it makes it tricky to track down. And sometimes it takes 3 or 4 years before you can finally find the stolen vehicle. And then thirdly, that vehicle might be stolen and taken to a chop shop where it's disassembled for parts, and then the parts are resold on the black market. Okay, so how are we going to protect our vehicles and our assets from this? The first step is very simple. Lock your car, take the keys inside with you, and park in the garage if you have one. And that's 2/3 of my problem taken care of right there. Next layer, we can start adding those $40, $50 items off of Amazon. You can get an OBD2 lock to go over that OBD2 port so that they can't just plug into your vehicle, program keys, and drive off. You can get the old club that goes across the steering wheel, and again, lock that on, and that's another layer. And I get asked all the time, well, can't they just cut through the club? Yes, they could if they brought a battery-powered grinder with them, but they have to carry that with them there. They have to take the extra time and make extra noise in order to cut through that. Or they could just leave your car alone and go down the road because somebody else is going to have their vehicle unlocked with the keys in it. So it's all about making yourself a harder target, and we don't want to be victims. So let's protect ourselves and add these extra add-ons if we feel like it. Using those signal blocking pouches and boxes, that's another great step for when you're at home and ready to go to bed at night. Next, we can look at vehicle immobilizers. You can think of this as a kill switch. So when you're done with your vehicle for the day, there's an aftermarket add-on you can get to your vehicle, and you hit the button and it kills the power from the battery to the ignition. The rest of the car should still have power so that the computer doesn't turn off and everything, and then your clocks and radios don't reset. If you're going to do this, I would recommend going to a like your car dealer or the manufacturer to get this installed, just so it's done correctly. But it's a great option for you. And then we can start talking about GPS trackers that you can get professionally installed in the vehicle. So the Insurance Bureau of Canada is pushing a company called TAG. They are out of Montreal, and they install 4 different GPS units in behind body panels of the car. Sometimes these criminals will look for a GPS unit to disable. The good thing about the tag system is if they disable one, there's still 3 more transmitting that signal. And the tag system has been effective even if it makes its way to a train, a rail yard, or the Port of Montreal. If it gets put into a CCAN, the tags have been pushing signal through the CCAN walls. So it's been a very effective auto theft recovery tool. And with tag, if you decide to get one, talk to your insurance company, because they'll often reduce your yearly payment to them, and then they may end up paying for half or full cost, which means you don't have to spend as much money on it, right? So, and what are you going to do if your vehicle gets stolen? If it's happening in the moment, call 911. And if it's happened after the fact, it happened last night, and you wake up, you can call our 1-888 number, 1-888-310-1122. That's going to go direct to our dispatch in London. And as soon as you call, you're going to get a dispatcher, or a call taker rather, and they're going to create an incident number. And then we'll get police to you as soon as we can. Provide as much detail as you can about the vehicle. And I'd ask that you go into more detail than just it's a white 2023 F-150, because there's a lot of white 2023 F-150s out there. Think about what makes a vehicle yours. So some people have the stick figure families in the back window. If you have that, let us know, and we will start looking for that specific thing. If you backed into something and dented the back left corner, let us know that, because that's going to be an indicator that this is the specific vehicle we're looking for. You're going to want to notify your insurance company right away. If you have GPS tracker, whether it's from the manufacturer or professionally installed aftermarket, start looking at that to help us get to the vehicle quicker. And then start talking with your banks and your other financial institutions to secure your accounts. A lot of people leave mail or financial information in their vehicles. Maybe you might leave a debit or credit card, and you want to secure those before it gets into the hands of the criminals anyway. Okay. That ends the formal PowerPoint portion.
Thanks, Brad. I did put a question in the chat. I was just wondering if vehicle manufacturers thought of adding is it S2 port lock or tracking system as part of the vehicle before it's purchased?
Yeah, I haven't heard much as far as like adding a from the manufacturer an OBD2 lock. That's a good idea. You should work for Range Rover, maybe. But I have heard from different manufacturers. I think Kia's mulling it over, and I think Range Rover as well, as to like, do they start adding a double authentication to get into the car? So you've got a key, and then maybe there's an extra step like a PIN code or a biometric something to the car. And I think they're trying to figure out what's going to be effective, and at the same time, what's not going to upset the customer and delay them starting their car, because they still want to sell cars and have satisfied customers. So the manufacturers are still trying to figure out what is this going to look like in the future. And I haven't heard anything solid. I've just heard double authentication may be an option to that.
Are there any other questions? You did a really good job covering everything. So, oh, there is a question from Ian. He's a staff member.
Hi. Can
Hi,
you hear me?
Ian. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you. That was a brilliant presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Couple of things. Um, I can't recall the car, but I know there's an ad and somebody, it's a new car and they don't have the key to it. And the owner of the vehicle sends them an app or something, and then they can use their phone to operate the vehicle. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I think that's that was on during the playoffs, and I think Connor Bedard from the Chicago Blackhawks, the young hockey players, the guy, I think it's a Hyundai.
Yeah.
And yeah, his sister needs in his car, and so he shares a link or something.
So would that kind of thing make it easier again for these folks, or is that basically what they're doing with those devices?
I haven't seen too much of that technology come into play with auto theft. I wonder if it's maybe a good option, because that will have a specific frequency or signal or pin or something to start that vehicle in that moment. And if you're a thief just kicking a window in, you're not going to have whatever verification key from the manufacturer to start it. So I don't have a solid answer as to is it more likely or less likely to prevent auto thefts, but me just spitballing. It sounds like an interesting option, and I think it might help prevent auto thefts. But as far as data to back that up, I haven't seen anything.
Thank you.
Stan had a question. I unmuted him.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I got last fall, I got a new truck, of course, the Ram, which is the high risk one. Insurance company, they wanted the tag right away, which it's a no-brainer. By the time they give you the discount on the tag itself and plus your insurance, you're bucks ahead. But next question is though, the guy that does our dash cams for us, they have this engine disabler called a Ghost. And I don't know if the officer's familiar with that, but they claim that they're one of the few that are unbeatable by the crooks. But
I haven't heard specifically about Ghost as a company, but I do know the vehicle immobilizers, great option. Like that was step 3 on that tiered list I gave. And if you're parking the car for an extended period and you can again kill the power to the ignition so that even if they break in, they can't start it. That's a phenomenal tool. And like if I was a car thief, I don't know how I'd bypass that unless I had days of time, which often they don't. They want to get it and go because they don't want to get caught. So
the installer, he had a question too. Why are the insurance companies kind of pushing the tag, which allows you to track it after it's stolen rather than trying to stop it from being stolen?
So great question. Tag. When we do a big project that's involved with organized crime or a local drug dealer or something, when we make an arrest, if they have an electronic device on them, we're going to seize that. And then if I believe it's relevant, if it's a relevant piece of equipment that they're using in their crimes, I'm going to write a search warrant to it to collect evidence to support my case. And these criminal organizations they text each other and they're messaging each other and coordinating their theft activities on cell phones. So what they found is if you seize a cell phone, well, they have seized cell phones. They have written search warrants to what the contents in the cell phone, and they found chats back and forth amongst the thieves saying if it's marked, because when you get a tag, there's a glass etching into the passenger window for it. So the criminals are saying if there's a tag sign etched into the window, do not touch it. Do not, it's not worth their time. We're just going to get busted because it's been an effective way. So getting the tag and getting that glass etching alone is a deterrent itself. And that's been proven by data collected through search warrants into those cell phones. Does that make sense, Dan?
Yeah, yeah. Still be nice to have them stop before they take it.
Absolutely. That's if we can avoid them even thinking about it to begin with, that's the ultimate goal. Which might lead me into maybe I'll mention while I'm here. So in Perth County, we have a program called Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. And there are design elements to your property or business that we can consider that just psychologically will have an impact on a potential criminal and deter them just because of how we design a property or have design elements. And I'm not talking about iron bars over your windows or like a big ugly steel door, but it's where we place a flower bed or how high we trim our hedges in front of our house can have a huge impact psychologically. In Perth County, you can call our office and request it, and we will have an officer come out and walk around with you and do a free audit of your property, and give you some food for thought on how we might be able to design that to deter crime from happening in the first place. I know our surrounding counties do have the capability as well. And certainly if your county doesn't, you can give me a call and we'll see about sending one of ours out to you. So that's an option for you as well.
All right.
Do insurance companies give any discounts or anything if you can prove that you've had an audit done on your property?
That would be a question for the insurance company. I know some insurance companies have bought into that crime prevention through environmental design as well. So your insurance company may have the ability to send an auditor out to do that walk around with you as well. And as far as do you get an extra discount for that? I would hope, but that's a better question for the insurance company to answer.
Another little question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I kind of look after trucking business too. Now our newer transport truck. So our newer transport trucks, the mother company seems to be able to track them everywhere. They know if there's something wrong, if there's one cylinder that's not firing. And they also have the ability to shut them down. And I've kind of talked to our salesman. He says, well, if you call the salesman and then they get a hold of the company, they can shut down the vehicle right then and there. Do you see that happening with our passenger vehicles and being able to, or is that going to cause more problems on the road?
No, so that technology does exist. Like GM has OnStar, and OnStar has that capability. The issue with something professionally installed by the manufacturer, and we've seen it where the criminal knows, okay, that shark fin on the top of this pickup truck, that's the transmitter that's transmitting to the satellite for OnStar. So if I cut this part of the headliner, I'll get access to the bottom of that shark fin and I can just cut it with a pair of pliers. And now that's not being transmitted. And that's where the aftermarket things like the tag, again, I have no financial interest in tag or speedy glass. It's just an example that's available in Ontario. But whether it's tag or another company, the aftermarket stuff are typically hidden much better and much harder to access to disable. And that's the benefit of the aftermarket transmitters.
So there's a question, how effective is OnStar at tracking a stolen vehicle? And I think maybe you just answered that they can disable it.
Yeah, so OnStar is great if, and again, I'm speaking in generalizations, but if it's your local criminal who's going to steal that truck for local crime and they're not technologically savvy, that is going to be an effective tool. If it's a professional who makes their bread and butter from stealing cars, they're going to know how to disable OnStar. Whether it's clipping that shark fin wire or whether they just rip the whole GPS unit out of the dashboard. So I'm not going to say OnStar is a bad thing. I think it's great. But if you're driving one of those high risk targeted vehicles, you might want to consider an aftermarket option.
That makes sense. Is there any other questions? Maybe Pete, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, thank you very much. On behalf of the OFA, we really appreciate your time in giving us this excellent presentation. As we mentioned before, it will be recorded and available on the OFA website. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming.
Thanks,
And
Brad.
thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.